In the heart of West Africa, there was a country called Burkina Faso. The people there were strong and proud, but many were afraid. Life had not been easy. Some areas were peaceful, but others were troubled by danger and fear. Even though things were hard, one man gave the people hope. His name was Ibrahim Traoré. He was the president, and he promised to protect the country and make it safe for everyone. President Traoré was not like other leaders. He was young, brave, and had once been a soldier. Many people believed in him, especially the poor and the forgotten. But not everyone wanted him to stay in power. Some powerful people, both inside and outside the country, were angry with him. They didn't like the changes he was making. They began to whisper in secret, planning something terrible. At the same time, in a quiet part of the capital city, lived a little girl named Assata. She was only 5 years old. She lived with her mother, Halima, in a small home near a busy market. Her mother sold rice and beans by the roadside to earn money. Every day, Assata walked with her to the stall and helped set up the pots and plates. Then she would go to preschool nearby. Assata loved to sing, draw, and chase butterflies. She was full of life and loved by everyone who met her. But that day was different. Clouds hung low in the sky, and the air felt heavy. Halima didn't say much that morning. She had heard something strange on the radio about soldiers being moved and roads being blocked. Assata didn't understand it, but she could tell her mother was worried. The little girl hugged her tight and smiled, trying to make her feel better. After school, Assata walked home alone, like she always did. She wore a pink backpack with a broken zipper and carried a piece of chalk in her hand. She liked to draw shapes on the walls as she walked. Today, she saw a bright blue lizard run across the street. Laughing, she followed it, forgetting about the path she was supposed to take. The lizard led her into a narrow alley between two buildings. It was quiet there, and the sun barely touched the ground. Suddenly, she heard voices. Two men stood in the shadows, speaking in low tones. She stopped behind a large metal bin and listened. She didn't understand everything they said, but she heard something that made her heart beat faster. Friday, convoy, the overpass, one man said. Make sure he doesn't leave alive, said the other. Assata didn't know what a convoy was, but she knew the word Friday, and something about the way they spoke made her scared. Then one of the men turned and looked right at her. He smiled. Run along, little one, he said. She nodded and ran as fast as her little feet could carry her, never looking back. Assata ran all the way home, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't stop until she reached the front door, where her mother, Halima, was waiting. Halima looked up from her cooking, surprised to see her daughter so out of breath. Assata, what is it? What's wrong? She asked, worried. Assata was trying to catch her breath, but the words tumbled out in a rush. There were two men in the alley. They were talking about Friday and a convoy, and they said something bad would happen. Halima didn't understand at first. What men? What did they say? She asked. But Assata was shaking her head. It was all so strange to her. The words, the looks, everything. She tried to explain again, but it didn't make sense. Her mother frowned, not sure what to believe. You must have imagined it, Assata, Halima said gently, reaching out to pat her daughter's head. Those men were probably just passing by. Maybe you didn't hear right. But Assata was sure of what she had heard. The memory of the men's voices and the way they looked at her stayed in her mind. She felt something was wrong. She could not explain why, but she knew she had to tell someone. No, Mama, she insisted, her small voice filled with worry. I heard them, I promise. Halima sighed and nodded. She could see her daughter wasn't going to let it go. Still, she didn't take it too seriously. It's late, sweetie. We'll talk more tomorrow. That night, however, Halima couldn't stop thinking about Assata's words. Something about the way the little girl spoke made her uneasy. The words convoy and Friday kept echoing in her mind. She remembered hearing a strange report on the radio earlier about some military movements, but she didn't think much of it at the time. Now, she wasn't so sure. The next morning, Halima decided to visit her brother. Her brother, Sori, worked for the military. He wasn't high-ranking, but he often had information about things happening around the city. Maybe he could shed some light on Assata's strange story. Sori was surprised when Halima mentioned what Asada had said. At first, he laughed it off. Children have wild imaginations, Halima, he said. They mix up things they hear and see. But then Halima mentioned something specific that Asada had said. The convoy. She had even described how the men were talking about it in such a way that it seemed real. Sori paused. No one outside the military was supposed to know about the president's plans, and certainly not a 5-year-old girl. You think she might have overheard something? Halima asked, her voice shaking a little. Sori thought for a moment, then his expression changed. I'll make a few calls, he said, his tone serious now. It's probably nothing, but let me check. As Halima left his office, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening, and she feared it was something much bigger than a child's imagination. The day passed slowly for Halima. She spent most of it looking after her food stall, but her mind kept drifting back to Asada's words. The more she thought about it, the more certain she became that her daughter had heard something important, something that could not be ignored. As the sun began to set, Halima's brother, Sori, called her. His voice was tense. We need to talk, he said. Meet me at the cafe near the market in 15 minutes. Halima's heart raced. She knew something had happened, but she wasn't sure if it was good or bad. She quickly packed up her stall, kissed Asada on the forehead, and told her to wait inside. Then she hurried to the cafe. When she arrived, Sori was sitting at a table near the back. His face was serious. He didn't smile when he saw her. Halima, you're not going to like this, he began, his voice low. But Asada may have overheard something real. I made some calls, and it turns out there was a plan to attack the president's convoy on Friday. The information was supposed to be a secret. Halima's eyes widened in shock. She sat down slowly, trying to process what he had just said. So what does that mean? Are they planning to kill the president? She asked, her voice trembling. Yes, Sori said, nodding grimly. It was an attack planned for Friday, during the president's visit to the orphanage. We've been tracking the suspects, but we didn't know their exact plans. Until now. Halima felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. She couldn't believe it. Asada, her 5-year-old daughter, had unknowingly discovered the plot. How could this have happened? How had a little girl's innocent words turned into something so serious? We need to tell someone, Halima said, her voice shaky. We need to warn the president's people. I'm already on it, Sori replied. I'd contacted the security team. They're taking the information seriously now. But the thing is, no one knows how much we can trust the source of the threat. We can't just panic. We need proof. Halima nodded. She knew her brother was right. It was too dangerous to act without being certain. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about how Asada had heard the men talking in that alley. And it wasn't just the words they said. It was the way they had looked at her, the way they'd smiled as though they didn't care she was there. After a long pause, Halima asked, "What happens now?" "Now we wait," Sori said. "But we're ready. I'll keep you updated. If anything happens, we'll act quickly." As Halima left the cafe, she felt a mixture of fear and hope. She was scared for her country, scared for President Traoré, but also grateful for her daughter. Asada had seen something no one else had, and maybe, just maybe, she had just saved a life. The next morning, Asada woke up early, as she always did. She sat up in bed and looked out the window. The sky was cloudy, and the air felt heavy, as though something important was about to happen. She didn't know it yet, but today would change everything. Meanwhile, at the presidential palace, President Ibrahim Traoré's security team was already on high alert. They had received an anonymous tip about a possible attack on the president's convoy, and they were taking no chances. The plan was for President Traoré to visit an orphanage on the edge of the city. His security team had carefully prepared the route and kept it a secret, but now they had to adjust everything. They were not sure who the enemy was or how they knew about the convoy. President Traoré had always been calm under pressure, but today, even he felt the weight of the situation. He knew someone out there wanted him gone. The young president had made enemies during his time in power, powerful people who did not want him to succeed, but he couldn't let fear control him. He had a job to do, and he would do it no matter the risk. As the convoy prepared to leave the palace, the security officers moved quickly to change the route. They didn't trust the original plan anymore. Every vehicle in the convoy was checked carefully, and additional guards were stationed along the route. The president's safety was their #1 priority. Meanwhile, Assata was still unaware of the danger. She was playing outside, chasing after the same blue lizard she had seen the day before. Her mother, Halima, watched her from the doorway, her thoughts still on the conversation she had with Sori. The president was in danger, but it wasn't clear yet whether the plot would be stopped in time. Back at the palace, as the convoy started its journey, everything seemed normal. But just as the convoy reached a long, open stretch of road, something felt off. One of the security officers, who had been monitoring the route, noticed something strange. A dark car pulled up too quickly beside the convoy, and several men got out, looking nervous. Within seconds, the quiet street erupted into action. The security team had been waiting for any sign of an attack, and they were ready. They quickly surrounded the dark car, and the men inside were arrested before they could act. It was a close call. The attackers had planned to use remote-controlled explosives hidden along the road to destroy the president's convoy. The plan was to strike when the president was most vulnerable, during the part of the trip when they were far from the palace and security forces. Thanks to the quick thinking of the security team, the attack was stopped before it could happen. The president's convoy was safe, but the danger wasn't over yet. The men who had been arrested were foreign operatives, hired by a secret group to carry out the attack. Back in the city, Halima was relieved to hear that the president was safe. She knew that Assata's words had played a big part in stopping the attack. The little girl had unknowingly given the right people the warning they needed. The plot had been foiled, but there was still a lot more to uncover. Who had been behind the attack, and what did they want from President Traoré? The answers were still out there, but for now, the danger had passed. The news of the foiled attack spread quickly across the country, but it wasn't made public right away. President Traoré's security team kept everything quiet, not wanting to cause panic. Only a few top officials knew what had happened and the close call they had just faced. It was all kept secret to protect the president and ensure no one would try again. But behind the scenes, things were moving fast. The men who had attempted the attack were being questioned. The security forces knew they needed to find out who was behind the plan and why they wanted to hurt President Traoré. It seemed like a plot bigger than anyone had imagined. Meanwhile, President Traoré sat in his office, feeling both grateful and uneasy. He was thankful for the quick actions of his security team, but he couldn't stop thinking about the threat. It was clear that someone powerful wanted him gone. But who? And why? He couldn't rest until he knew the full truth. In a quiet corner of the palace, Assata's name was being whispered. The little girl had unknowingly saved the president's life. Her quick thinking, though simple, had made all the difference. While she didn't fully understand what had happened, she was about to receive something no child could ever expect. Halima, Assata's mother, was called to the palace. She wasn't sure what to expect when she arrived, but she knew it was important. When she arrived, she was escorted through the grand halls of the palace to the president's office. Her heart beat faster with every step. She had no idea why they wanted to see her. When Halima entered the room, President Traoré stood up and greeted her with a warm smile. He was a tall, confident man, his uniform sharp and his face serious. But today, he seemed more relaxed than usual. He gestured for her to sit. "Thank you for coming," the president said in a calm voice. "I wanted to meet you and your daughter. I owe her my life." Halima blinked in surprise. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "My daughter?" she asked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "Yes." President Traoré nodded. "Assata's words were the key to stopping an attack on my convoy. If it weren't for her, things could have ended very differently." Halima was speechless. She still couldn't understand how a small child could have played such a big role in saving the president. She had never imagined that her daughter's simple warning could make such an impact. It was almost unbelievable. "Please," President Traoré continued, "bring her to the palace tomorrow. I'd like to thank her personally. She is a true hero." The words "true hero" filled Halima with pride. Her daughter, Assata, was no ordinary child. She had no idea the importance of what she had heard, but her innocent actions had saved a life. The next day, Halima took Assata to the palace. The little girl, still unaware of how big a role she had played, walked through the grand halls, her eyes wide in wonder. When they finally met President Traoré, he knelt down to her level, smiling kindly. "Thank you, Assata," he said, handing her a small wooden lion. "This is for you, as a symbol of your bravery." Assata smiled shyly, not fully understanding, but accepting the gift. She had saved the president, and the world was about to change for her. The next day, news about Assata's bravery began to spread quietly. It wasn't long before the story reached the press, but the government was careful not to make it too public. They didn't want to cause too much attention, especially in case there were more threats. Still, whispers of the little girl who saved the president were everywhere, and the people of Burkina Faso were beginning to notice. At the same time, the president's team worked tirelessly to learn more about the people behind the attack. They needed to find out who was really trying to harm President Traoré. The men who had tried to attack him had confessed to being hired by a secret group. But who were these people, and what was their plan? Meanwhile, Assata continued her normal life, blissfully unaware of the attention she had drawn. She went to school, played with her friends, and helped her mother at the food stall. But things were different now. Every time she stepped outside, people smiled at her in a special way. Some would even stop her and say, "Thank you for saving our president." Assata didn't know what they meant. She just smiled back and kept walking. One afternoon, Halima was cleaning the dishes when a car pulled up in front of their house. It was an official-looking vehicle with dark windows. Halima's heart skipped a beat. Who could it be? A man in a military uniform stepped out of the car and walked towards the door. Halima quickly wiped her hands and opened it. "Good afternoon, madam," the man said, his voice polite but firm. "I am Colonel Koa. I have come to speak with you and your daughter." Halima nodded, her heart racing. "Of course, please come in." The colonel sat down and glanced around before speaking. "We are aware of the role your daughter played in preventing the attack on the president's convoy. She showed great courage." Halima looked at him, unsure of what was coming next. "My daughter, she's just a child," she said quietly. "Yes," Colonel Koala replied, "but sometimes it is children who see things that adults miss. We are grateful for what she did. President Traoré himself wishes to meet her again." Halima's eyes widened. "The president? Again?" The colonel smiled. "Yes, he has asked that Assata come to the palace tomorrow. He wants to personally thank her for her bravery." Halima felt a mix of pride and nervousness. She had never imagined anything like this would happen. Assata was just a little girl. She never expected her to become a hero. But now, the president himself wanted to meet her again. It was an honor that no one in their family had ever experienced before. The next morning, Halima and Assata made their way to the palace. Assata was excited, but didn't fully understand why they were going. She thought it was just another visit to see the president, like the last time. Little did she know that today would be even more special. As they entered the grand halls of the palace, Assata's eyes grew wide. The palace was even bigger than she remembered. The walls were decorated with beautiful paintings, and the floors shined like glass. They were led into a large room where President Traoré was waiting. When the president saw Assata, he smiled warmly and walked towards her. "Hello, Assata," he said, bending down so they were eye level. "I wanted to thank you again for saving my life." Assata smiled shyly, her eyes wide with wonder. She didn't understand the full meaning of what had happened, but she felt happy to see the president again. The next few days were strange for Assata. She went back to her usual routine, playing with her friends and helping her mother with the food stall. But now, whenever she went outside, people would stop her and say, "Thank you, little one, for saving our president." She didn't fully understand what they meant, but she could see the smiles on their faces. It made her feel happy, even though she was still unsure why everyone was saying such nice things. Meanwhile, President Traoré's team was still investigating the group behind the attack. They had uncovered something shocking. The plot was much bigger than they had first thought. It wasn't just a group of angry people who wanted to harm the president. There were powerful leaders from outside the country who had been working in secret to destabilize the government. The security team had learned that the plot had ties to a larger plan to take control of Burkina Faso. These leaders wanted to change the country's path, and President Traoré stood in their way. The attack on the convoy was only one piece of the puzzle. They had wanted to remove him from power and put someone else in his place. As the investigation deepened, President Traoré knew that the situation was more dangerous than ever. He couldn't let his guard down, but he also knew that the people of Burkina Faso were depending on him. He had to continue leading, even if there were more threats ahead. One day, President Traoré invited Halima and Assata to the palace once more. This time, he had something special to offer them. When they arrived, the president was waiting with a small golden medal in his hand. It was shaped like a lion, just like the one he had given Assata before. "Assata," he said with a smile, "this is for you. It's the highest honor we can give to someone who shows great courage. This medal is for saving my life and for showing all of Burkina Faso that even the smallest among us can be heroes." Assata's eyes sparkled as the president placed the medal around her neck. It was heavy but beautiful. She didn't understand everything that had happened, but she knew this moment was important. She looked up at her mother, who was beaming with pride. "Thank you, President," Halima said, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for seeing what Assata did. She never meant to be a hero, but today we both understand how much her actions mattered." President Traoré nodded. "You have a brave daughter, Halima. She may not fully understand yet, but her bravery will inspire others. In times of trouble, even the smallest voice can change the course of history." Assata smiled, holding the medal close to her chest. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she felt proud of what she had done. Her life had changed, and so had the lives of the people around her. The country was still in danger, but the people had seen that even in the face of darkness, there was hope. And somewhere deep inside, Assata knew that her journey was just beginning. The days following Assata's meeting with President Traoré were filled with new excitement. The young girl, who had once been just another face in the crowd, had now become a symbol of courage for the people of Burkina Faso. Her name was mentioned in news reports, and her story was told in schools. She was even invited to appear on television to talk about the event, though she was still too young to fully understand the meaning of it all. Despite the attention, Assata remained a humble child. She continued to play with her friends, helping her mother at the food stall and taking care of her small responsibilities at home. But deep down, she knew something had changed. She felt proud of what she had done, though she would always think of it as something small, a simple warning that had made a big difference. President Traoré, too, was busy. The investigation into the group behind the attack continued, and with every new discovery, it became clearer that the situation was far from over. The people who had tried to harm him were still out there, and their plans were still unfolding. But the president knew one thing for sure: no matter what happened, he couldn't let fear control him. He would continue to lead his country, as he had promised. The people of Burkina Faso were watching closely. They had seen the strength of their president and his people. They had witnessed the bravery of a small child who had unknowingly stopped an attack that could have changed their future. The nation had been reminded that no matter how dark the time seemed, there was always hope. One afternoon, as Halima and Assata were finishing their work at the food stall, a car pulled up once again. It was a familiar vehicle, the same one that had brought the colonel to their house days before. Halima felt her heart race, unsure of what to expect this time. When the door opened, it was not the colonel who stepped out. Instead, President Traoré himself was standing there, a smile on his face. He had come to see Assata again. "Hello, Assata," he said, bending down to her level as he had done before. "How are you today?" Assata smiled shyly, unsure of what to say. "I'm fine, President," she replied softly. President Traoré looked around at the stall, then back at Halima. "I wanted to thank you, both of you, for what you have done. Your bravery has made a lasting impact on our country, but I also want to give you something more." He handed Halima a small envelope. "This is a scholarship for Assata. I want her to have the chance to grow, to learn, and to become anything she wants to be. It is for her future." Tears filled Halima's eyes. She never expected anything like this. The president wasn't just thanking them for saving his life. He was offering a way to help Assata build a better future, one full of opportunities. "Thank you, President," Halima said, her voice shaking with gratitude. "This means more than words can say." President Traoré smiled warmly. "It is nothing compared to what you and your daughter have given. Assata is a hero, and heroes deserve a chance to dream." As the president left, Halima held Asada close, knowing that their lives would never be the same. The little girl who had saved the president had also secured a brighter future for herself, a future filled with endless possibilities. And for the first time in a long while, Halima felt hope for what was to come.